caught my fiancée setting up our anniversary dinner as a test with her ex. So I reported her to HR, took screenshots of her messages, and photographed the district card invoice, and got Care's email thread, and sent it to the ethics address, and walked away as she went on unpaid leave. The email popped up on our shared tablet while I was paying for groceries. The subject line said, "Reservation confirmed marrow and stone table for 3." My thumb froze over the screen like it had hit ice. I stared at those words until the cashier cleared his throat. I smiled like nothing was wrong and slid my card, but my stomach had already started to sink. At home, our duplex in Chocolate Township felt normal on the surface. The entryway smelled like wet wool from our boots. A pot of basil sat by the window, and the old space heater clicked on and off under the couch. I was 41 then, and I worked at the city water treatment plant. I checked pumps, ran lab tests, and logged chlorine levels every shift. Most days I trusted the numbers because numbers do not flirt with you. Malin and I had lived together almost 2 years. This week was our anniversary, and we were supposed to celebrate big. On Monday, we were also set to sign the papers for a small house near the bay, and the earnest money deadline was close. That deadline mattered because both our names were on the offer. If one of us backed out, it would get messy fast. I kept telling myself we just needed one good night to reset. I didn't say anything about the email in the store. I drove home with the heater too high and my jaw clenched. If you ever get a strange clue like that, do one thing first: breathe and wait. That evening, Malin came home in her district badge and a neat coat. She worked as a school district grant coordinator, and she was always careful about rules in public. She set her laptop bag down like it was a trophy. I asked her about the reservation. I kept my voice even and said, "Why would our anniversary table be for 3?" She didn't blink and said, "It's just how the system books it, don't start a problem." That was our first confrontation. I asked, she answered, and she acted like I was silly for noticing. Mini hook right here because this is where the floor first cracked under my feet. The next morning at the plant, the air smelled like metal and clean bleach. Pumps thumped behind the walls, steady and loud. When something feels off in my life, I do what I do at work: read the pressure gauge. At lunch, I opened our shared calendar on the same tablet. Our anniversary dinner was there, but now it had an added note. It said, 7 p.m. marrow and stone Care meeting, like it was a work appointment. Care was her ex. I knew the name because it came up like a cough whenever we talked about old times. Seeing it in our anniversary plan made my hands go cold. I told myself not to explode. Here is practical advice number 1, and it is simple. Do not argue without clear facts because the person who set the trap will use your anger as proof. That night I waited until she showered, then checked the tablet again. Her Messages app was still open, left on the couch like she forgot it existed. I saw a thread with Care and my chest tightened before I even read. She had written, "I'm doing it. I need you there so I can finally decide." Care replied, "This is weird, Malin. Are you sure?" Then she wrote back, "Just show up and be charming. He needs to see what I'm comparing." I took screenshots and saved them to my own cloud account. No hacking, no tricks, just something left open in our shared space. Mini hook, because now I knew the table for 3 was not an accident. When she came out of the bathroom, I held the tablet and asked her straight. I said, "Why are you telling your ex you will decide between us?" She stayed calm and said, "It's called closure, Tavner, and you should be mature." That was our second confrontation. I pushed and she flipped it back on me like a coin. She said I was insecure, and she said my insecurity was the real problem. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just spoke slow and firm like she was setting rules for a child. Then she said something that stuck in my teeth. She said, "If you want a future with me, you will sit through one dinner and prove you're the better choice." Her eyes stayed flat, and my heart started to pound. Back at the plant the next day, I stood by the sampling sink and watched the clear water swirl. Clean water looks calm even when it is under force. I read the pressure gauge again, and it told me the truth: pressure builds until something gives. That afternoon, Malin left her work laptop open on the kitchen table. A file was up, like she had been printing something and got distracted. It was a restaurant invoice, and the header said Marrow and Stone Event Deposit. The invoice showed a deposit paid by a district purchasing card. It had a note line that said, "Vendor meeting dinner." My face went hot because our anniversary was being billed like a work event. I took a picture of the invoice on the screen. That was the money proof, and it was tied right to the same dinner. Mini hook, because now it wasn't only cruel, it was reckless. I didn't want to guess what to do with that, so I called someone who would not panic. I met an older labor counsel named Dunstan Rye at a late-night print shop near the highway. The place smelled like toner and burnt coffee. A paper cutter sat on the counter like a guillotine. Dunstan listened, nodded once, and said, "Keep it factual, keep it short, do not chase them into their game." He gave me advice number 2. He said, "If someone tries to make you compete, leave the arena. A decent partner doesn't run auditions." He also told me to protect myself on the house offer fast. By Friday, Malin acted like nothing was wrong. She hummed while she packed her purse. She laid out a nice shirt for me like she was planning a normal celebration. I watched her do it and felt something strange. It wasn't rage. It was clarity, like cold air on your face. Before we left, I did one small thing for safety. I pulled our home offer papers from the drawer and took photos of everything. Practical advice number 3, always keep copies of shared paperwork when stress is high. Marrow and Stone sat near the waterfront in Marquette, all warm lights and dark wood. The host smiled and led us to a table with 3 place settings, 3 glasses, 3 menus, 3 folded napkins like little flags. I looked at Malin and said quietly, "Tell me this is not happening." She smiled at the host and said, "They always set extra. Relax." That was the start of the final confrontation, and I could feel the trap closing. 2 minutes later, the host came back and asked, "Should I wait for your 3rd guest before bringing the appetizer?" Malin didn't look at me when she said, "Yes, please." That was her denial turning into a lie right in front of me. I asked, "Is Care coming?" She said, "No, Tavener, don't be dramatic." Then the front door opened and Care walked in with snow on his shoulders. Malin waved him over like he belonged there. She leaned in and said, "It's just a hello, it's not a test." That was her minimizing, trying to shrink the fire into a candle. Care sat down, stiff as a board. He looked at me first, then at her, like he was reading the room and finding no exit. Mini hook, because this is the moment I learned who had the least power at the table. I said, "Malin, what is this?" She finally looked at me and said, "I want you 2 to meet so I can finally decide who I should choose." That was the partial admit, the mask sliding down in plain view. My face went numb. The restaurant noise faded into a dull roar like water rushing through a pipe. I heard myself say, "Let me help you decide." I stood up and placed my napkin on the table. I didn't yell. I didn't call her names. I just walked out because I refused to compete for basic respect. Outside, the air was sharp and clean. I took one full breath and felt my hands stop shaking. Rid the pressure gauge, I told myself, because the gauge never begs you to stay in danger. 5 minutes later, Care came out behind me. He didn't look smug. He looked tired. He said, "I didn't know she was going to say it like that." Then he held up his phone and showed me an email chain. It was from Malin's district email, and it spelled out the plan. She had written, "Dinner is Friday. I will put him on the spot. I need a decision by Monday before the house papers." She had also written, "Do not reply in writing from your work email. Use your personal," like she knew she was crossing a line. That was the killer receipt, a hidden email thread that tied her job to her game. Care swallowed and said, "I'm not losing my own work over this." Then he walked away, and I never saw him again. Malin started texting both of us before I even reached my car. My phone lit up again and again like a warning light. She tried sweet words, then sharp ones, then fear, and I did not answer. I blocked her number. I blocked Care too, not because he mattered, but because I wanted the noise to stop. Mini hook, because silence is the first step to getting your life back. I didn't sleep in our duplex that night. I stayed in a small carriage house rental behind a bait shop in Harvey. The place smelled like pine cleaner and old wood, and the heater wheezed like it had opinions. In the morning, I changed one thing for safety. I updated the mailbox code and removed my payment info from shared subscriptions. It wasn't revenge, It was a boundary, and boundaries keep people from reaching into your pockets. I emailed Dunstan Rye the screenshots and the invoice photo. I kept the subject line calm and boring, request for guidance regarding district card misuse. Dunstan replied with one sentence, send to HR compliance and do not meet her alone. That afternoon, I forwarded the evidence to the district ethics address listed on their public site. I did not add extra drama, just facts, dates, and the files that spoke for themselves. A week later, Dunstan called me from a quiet office. He said the district HR director had opened a formal review because the purchasing card and work email were involved. He said I would not be blamed because the email thread showed she made the choices. Malin tried other ways to reach me. She messaged me through a professional networking site and wrote, "Please talk to me. You're destroying my life." I didn't reply because she had already tried to turn my calm into a weapon. The district process moved like slow machinery. Meetings, forms, statements, all in plain language. I did not have to fight her because the proof did the work. The legal climax happened in a training room at the district office. The fluorescent lights buzzed and binders lined the walls like bricks. Dunstan sat across from me and asked only what mattered. Did you approve that card use, and did you consent to your information being used in that email? I said no to both. That was it. No speech, no threats, no long debate. 2 weeks later, I heard the outcome through Dunstan. Malin was placed on unpaid leave and removed from grant access. She had to repay the dinner deposit, and her promotion path was frozen for the year. People at her office talked, because offices always talk. The shame part didn't come from me. It came from the fact that she tried to turn 2 men into a scoreboard and used public money to do it. Here is the small twist that surprised me. Malin told HR I must have broken into her account. Dunstan showed me the app login history from the district system, and it listed our home Wi-Fi address as the login point on the night she left her laptop open. That cleared me, and it sank her excuse. Read the pressure gauge, I thought, because lies crack when you add timestamps. Mini hook, because facts do not care how charming someone sounds. The house offer expired without our signatures. I felt sad about that, but not broken. A house is just walls, and respect is the real foundation. I moved my things out over 2 weekends while she stayed with a relative. I didn't leave a note. I left the keys on the counter and walked away from the life that had turned into a test. Work became my steady place again. The plant was loud, honest, and simple. You do the job, you record the numbers, you go home. 6 months later, I earned a lead operator role at the plant. I trained new hires on safety checks and taught them to slow down. I told one kid, the gauge will warn you before a pipe bursts if you pay attention. Malin tried once more to pull me back in. She sent a long message on that networking site saying she missed me and wanted closure. I closed the app and went outside instead. In the next year, I met someone new named Rana. She coordinated wildlife rehab intakes for a small regional center. She spoke softly, but she did not play games with people's hearts. One evening, we ate simple takeout on a bench at Presque Isle Park. The lake was dark and calm, and the air smelled like cedar and cold stone. Rana asked me what I learned, and I said, never audition for love. I looked out at the water and felt steady. Read the pressure gauge, I told myself one last time, because peace has a quiet number 2. And when you finally see it, you don't argue with it. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.